Hi, this is Michael of the Metaphysical Journey, and these are my thoughts on a Sunday for May the 19th, 2024. Today, I want to talk about fear. F.E.A.R. False expectations appearing real. There are many types of fear. Fear for our life, fear for our well-being, fear for our jobs, fear all the way around. And I want to talk about all of those, but I want to talk about the one that is probably the number one driver of our lives, whether we realize it or not, and that is the fear of what others will think. That one thing shapes so much of what we do. It also drives our economy. It's built on fear. You have to wear the right clothes. What will people think? You have to buy the right products to look young. You don't want people to think you look old. I mean, those are just two examples, but you can see if you really think more about it, it drives everything. Everything we do, the decisions that we make, it's largely based upon the reaction or response from other people, not really ourselves. We put everyone else first. So that's a major driving fear. That is something that can ruin your life. And you definitely probably spend a lot of time unhappy about it because there's this constant worry. What will people think? I heard a social media creator and influencer who I follow who really love this lady. She's amazing. But today, in one of her things, she said, fear can't stop death, but fear can stop life. And we don't live the life that we really want because of that fear. So it's easy for me to say, stop doing that, but it's much harder than that. But there is a way to get a handle on it. And that's what I want to talk about. How do we stop those fears? First, we have to face it, face the fear, and really look deeper at it because our fears and all of our emotions, we label those ourselves. That fear doesn't exist on its own. It exists in our mind and our thoughts, and we're the ones that do that. We label it. So if we label it, we can also pull the label off or at least relabel it into something else. So I want to talk about how to do that. Think about something that you are afraid of. And it can be something as simple as when I return to work on Monday, what are people going to say? Maybe you had a conversation on Friday with someone and it didn't go the way you think it did, and you have just you run that over in your head over and over and over, and you've been worrying, what if they took it this way? What if they didn't understand what I meant? Maybe I was in a bad mood and I said it really quickly. What are they going to think? And you don't know what to expect when you get to work. Or it can be looking at your bank account or something and you worry like what's going to happen, and you just play that over and over and over. And as we play those things in our minds, we have that base fear of what a person's going to think based on something that you said. And the more we play it, we have little offshoots that go for it. Worst case scenarios, tons of them. We run them wild. Well, perhaps consider, go back to what the fear itself is. And I'll use the work example. All right, I'll say to myself, I know what I meant to say. I know what my intent was, but I don't know what the impact is of that or what the impact was of that. And I'm worried about the impact. Let me go back to what I said. So I say this, and I'm worried that someone's going to think that. Well, what if they do think that? If they think it, they'll say something and I'll explain what I meant and we'll have that conversation. So that's not as bad as I think. Or what if it turns out I don't have as much money in the bank as I think I should have, and something goes wrong? What's the worst that can happen? I have to find the money to make it up. Maybe I get a late charge or something, or an overdraft fee. That's not so bad. I've done that before. I can deal with that. So think about that fear that you have and run all the different scenarios, but instead of going to the negative extreme of all the horrible things, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And come up with 3 or 4 things. And then look at each of those 3 or 4 things and say, all right, if this happens, then I can deal with it this way. If this happens, I can do that. What you're doing whenever you really think about your fear and you just run it out and then look at a game plan for each one of those, is you are forming an action plan of how you're going to deal with it. So it's no longer just a fear that's running wild on its own and you have no control over it. You do have control over it because you're the one that labels it as fear. You do that. So bring that label back and rework it and think about it. What is the worst case scenario? Because every worst case scenario has a perfect solution of how to deal with it. And it's finding the solutions that really diminishes the fear. It takes it away and it puts you in charge of it. Now, the reason I bring this up is that this is really important for you to be able to start doing this, because with all the changes that you've been through, all the upgrades and the different things that you're seeing, the people that you are slowly moving away from, the situations you're letting go, the things that you used to think meant everything now suddenly mean nothing. And you're like, well, okay, what do I do? The reason all that's happening is because you are becoming a different person. And there's responsibilities that come with that. As you upgrade, that means your purpose is also upgraded, your reason to be here. And you chose to come here to Earth at this particular time because the whole purpose is to raise the vibration. And in order to raise the vibration, you also have to up the game. Now, as part of that upping the game, there are different abilities and skills and gifts that you have. And now's the time to start using them. You can't really use them if you're always worried about what other people are going to think about it. Now think about that. So let's say you're sitting on the most powerful ability and gift. Right now you're sitting, you have that. It's yours and it's been yours all along, but now it's awakened inside of you and you're thinking, crud, what am I going to do? Because I'm afraid of what people are going to think. They're going to think I'm crazy. Well, did they think you were crazy before? Maybe, but are you crazy? No. So does it really matter what they think? You have to be able to step out in faith. And faith is that the unknown, but it's not really unknown if in our own minds we have spun an entire web of fear all the way around it and encased it and encapsulated it, and we've trapped it. It's locked in there, and it's locked in our own fear that we did that. We spun that web. So it's time to start pulling that web apart and really looking at it more closely. What are we afraid of? Everything that we fear, there is a solution there. It's like the thing, if there's a question, there's an answer. If there's a fear, there's a cause. And that cause needs to be looked at. And when you look more closely at it and you really examine it for what it is, you start to see, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Where the horror comes from, the fear, is how we play it and spin it in our minds. And fear is like its own little entity just going crazy, and we allow it to run wild. It's time to definitely stop that, reel that back in and say, I labeled you, I can unlabel you, and I'm going to get a handle on this and figure out what I can do, because you always have options. And as you move forward on your path, your journey, you're going to have these opportunities presented to you to help other people, to do something that you've never done before. And you have to have the courage to say, I don't care what people think. I will face my fear and I will do this. Because I promise you, when you step across that threshold, it's going to change your life. And each time you do that, it gets easier and easier. And after a while, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. All that matters is that you are doing what you're being led to do, because that's what your purpose is. So fear should have no place in the control of your life, especially the fear of what others are going to think. I promise you, they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. We worry when we get dressed and go somewhere. Everything has to be perfect because what are they going to think? They're not looking at you. They don't care. They're focused on themselves and they're walking around wondering, what are people going to think? What are people going to think? So we're all so concerned about what others are going to think. And the one thing that we are not thinking about is ourselves. And no one else is thinking about you. So change that narrative in your head and realize that you are perfect the way you are. Now, I was chatting with a friend earlier today, and an amazingly beautiful, talented, incredible lady who's just like the perfect spiritual coach, mentor, teacher. She's amazing. And I've known her for some years now. She lives local, so I get to see her from time to time. And she made a comment, and that really stuck with me. And the comment is that this is a person that's going through some incredible changes. It's just amazing to watch what's happening in her life. And she commented on something, there was something that happened, and she said, you know, she wasn't having something, perhaps she were like the best spiritual moment or something. And she handled everything flawlessly. But she compared it to the spiritual. And my response to her was, no, that was a human moment. It's not a spiritual moment. And there's something there in that we are light beings that are here on earth, and we are in a human body. And that's part of the lesson here, is to come down from where we were before and to go into a human body. Now, it's the same thing as if you were given some new computer software. And anytime software is created, it automatically goes out to beta testers first. And the beta testers work all the bugs out of it. And then they report back, all this is done, new changes and upgrades are made to it. And then finally the major launch to the public goes out for the software because the bugs have been worked out. Well, you're here on Earth and you were given a human body and the bugs have not been worked out. You are a beta tester right now and you are working out the bugs as you go. Now, as part of this human body, it comes with software, and that's the software of emotions. So lucky you came from a state of perfection into a human body that it's kind of clunky, and you have all these emotions and stuff involved, and you got to work through, you know, it just gets better all the time. You have to find your destiny, find your path, remember who you are as much as you can, you know, where you come from, remember that you're not disconnected, you are still connected with the other side, even though it doesn't seem like it. In a lot of different traditions will teach you, no, it's just you're on your own, and you're dealing with all the people around you, and a lot of them feel disconnected. So it's like materialism extravaganza. It's like, you know, who has the most when they die wins. That's crazy. So you have all these things placed on you, all these layers of craziness. That's the human experience. So you are going to make a lot of mistakes. But inside your light being, your perfection, you are perfection. You're just going through a beta testing period here in this incarnation. And so there's gonna be a lot of mistakes, and fear is part of that. So it's overcoming the fear, the fear that you aren't good enough, or that you're not worthy, or that you're not connected, or that you don't have support coming into you. It's that fear of isolation and separation. And that's what causes us to not want to be rejected by other people. That's a major driving fear, and it stops everything. That's the first thing we face. It's so natural in the human body, that emotion, that we don't even question it. But we need to look more deeply at that. We do need to question it and ask, all right, what is the worst that can happen? Because what you're going to see, it's not that bad. I mean, the absolute worst is having to do public speaking. Now, that's real fear right there, I tell you. I think public speaking is like the #1 fear, and I believe on a list I saw, death was #3. So more people are afraid of speaking publicly than dying, and which makes sense, because I had a job once where we had a summer concert series, and we would have to give a 5-minute talk in front of 10,000 plus people. I remember many times praying for death. It's like, please let me die before I have to do this, because that was scary. So there's many different types of fear. But once you step over that threshold and you actually start, it's not that bad. And you'll see, okay, I survived that. I can do more. Because with the gifts that you have, if you can get a handle on the fear of what other people think, when you deliver that message, you deliver that content, you are going to change someone's life. How beautiful is that? It's an amazing thing. So fear, F.E.A.R, false expectations appearing real, and they only appear real in our head, and we have control over that. The other thing to keep in mind is that manifesting things, it's our thoughts that drive that. We know that now. The world was introduced to that when the movie The Secret came out. That's when it became mainstream. And from that launched, I'm sure, $1 billion industry on how to manifest and the law of attraction and to get the thing of your dreams, all these things, positive, positive, positive. But what about the negative thoughts? Our fears that we have, that manifests as well. And probably for many people, that's where they're really hitting the manifestation mark. They're nailing it every time. They are afraid something's going to happen. And guess what? It does. That's amazing manifestation skills. If they could just twist that, flip it, they could be impressed, I'm sure. But the more we fear something, the more we attract it into our lives. I think it was Job in the Bible that says something along the lines of, that which I feared has come upon me. All the things that we have heard the story of what he went through. And that story, by the way, predates all the rest of the stuff in the Bible. It comes from a much earlier culture or civilization. It was well-known that just continues. It's the story that really transcends cultures and timelines because it's the perfect story. But we do that every day to ourselves. And it's through the fears that we have. That fear when you wake up in the morning. I was talking earlier about Monday. What's Monday going to be? Well, I'm sure Monday morning in the shower, you will be fighting it out in your head. You will be working through this. And by the time you get to work, you're going to be primed and pumped and ready to go because you've already fought it out in the shower. It doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. You can take control of that. And when you do, when you can start to flip that around, then you will be more prepared to deliver what you need to deliver to the people. Whatever gifts and abilities you have coming in, you will step in faith and confidence and courage that you can do it. It also will change how you manifest things into your life. More positive things will start to happen. If you are looking at things through a positive lens, then that's what you're going to get, because the world presents itself to us in a way in which we see it in our head. That's how you make that reality of changing. So taking control of how you think about your fears and having those, instead of worst case scenarios, take the worst case scenario and flip it into a best case scenario of like, all right, well, if that happens, this is what I'm going to do. If this happens, I'll do that. Get on top of it. I'm not saying damage control, but in a way it is. But it's damage control in how you perceive the things that are happening around you, of how you take control and shift that to make it something more positive. If you are facing a situation and you have a plan in place of how to deal with it, right there, you're on top of it. That's great. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens through you. And it's through your thoughts and how you address it. Anyway, those are my thoughts for a Sunday. I hope that resonates with you and that you can take your 5 worst fears right now and just sit down and write them out and come up with action steps for every worst case scenario to make it a positive outcome, because you can do that. Thank you for following me on the metaphysical journey, and have a beautiful Sunday, because you know what? You've earned it. It's yours. Bye.